What is different about your product?
You got a story to tell, something gonna connect to somebody else.
How to actually run a business versus having a vision for a business.
A lot of people come to me and they say they're scared to take that next leap.
Visual design is always going to be driven by the vision.
And I just was like, how do I do this?
What am I adding that they don't have?
Hey, brand builders, ready to take your brand to the next level? I'm Dana Ammons, and welcome to the Brand Blueprint.
Hello guys, my name is Christian Ampuero. Welcome to another episode of the Brand Data Lab. I have to start saying that I totally forgot to tell you about something in the last episode. And that's why I wanted to start by doing a recap. So, last time we were talking about market research, we had our survey, we were seeing the questions, how many there were, and all that stuff. If you haven't watched that episode, whether to watch it to know what I'm talking about. Basically, what I have to tell you about, it's a tip of something that you can do to facilitate your analysis of all those results from your survey or whatever tool you're using to gather information. So, when you are thinking about the questions, you of course have an objective, right? So you're gonna use those questions to gather information and reach your objective. Like for example, know your customers better. But then this is a tip: you should categorize these questions, and then after you are done, try to rethink about what can be done with these results, like with these questions. So, for example, when we were doing our market research survey, we were thinking, okay, well, for example, this age is gonna be useful for making the buyer persona, which is something we're gonna be doing in this capsule since it is brand identity and positioning. But then you start to think, well, for example, we can relate or we can find a link between this question and, for example, the channels, and you're gonna see perhaps some correlation, and this is gonna help me for my commercial strategy. So you see, try to group your questions into different categories that they might be useful for, and then you're gonna find that they are even more useful than you thought at the beginning. This was the tip. I hope you liked it. It is really useful because it is going to help you in that process of connecting the dots after you get the results, and it will improve your efficiency for getting those results that you wanted at the end. Now, let's talk about our today's topic. Once again, I'm saying it's brand identity and positioning, and I am going to talk about why is it important to do this type of research regarding the brands? Well, there are, of course, qualitative and quantitative data that you can gather. Something like we have done with the survey, something more quantitative, because at the end it's going to be measured by numbers, like how many answers we got for each answer, right? But I want to talk a little bit about qualitative research. Why is this important? Because it is gonna open some doors to try to get different sort of information that can be, well, of course, can be gotten or gathered using a qualitative method. So, for example, something that you can get out of qualitative research is experiences and how people are relating with your brand, like how are they generating links with it. They may have some sort of bad or good experience that somehow is related to your product. Like, for example, if someone went on a date with the person they were attracted to, and they were told yes, perhaps the shirt that they were using that day, they may think it brought them luck. And so you know that if you find this story, you find it well for them to tell you this story, then you know that your product has a special link with someone. This is something amazing for brands because these stories are gonna be somewhat of a way of feeding, how can you exploit your story, how can you try to reach to other people. So for example, instead of just saying, well, this is a shirt that is for everyone, well, now that I have this story, I can say this has been proven to be useful for dates. And you can launch a campaign on Valentine's Day. You see? So qualitative research is just as important as quantitative research. Now, data analysis is going to be really helpful in the future when you are also trying to evaluate your brand indicators. We are going to talk about a few of them, and we're not going to go too deeply into them because perhaps are going to talk about them more in the marketing capsule, which is the next one. Right now, at this stage, we are barely just building our brands, right? So this could be a little bit of talking about what's going to happen in the future, but still, since it is highly related, it is a must. And also, before going to indicators, there is one more thing that is very important, and you're probably gonna hear this a lot during the capsule, and that's that by doing research about the brand, about your brand, of course, you also need to study your competition. And let's forget about everything else for a second, because this is a pillar of everything else. What is this? When you're doing your brand research of the competition, you're gonna know what their brands are about, what their messages are, what they are basing their stories on, and you need to identify what can your brand offer that is different from the rest, right? You need to find your positioning, and of course, this is something crucial, elemental, really important. This is a cornerstone. There are no two brands that share the same positioning. It would be something crazy to do because you always want to differentiate in one way or another from the rest of the brand. So it would be crazy to go out there and try to offer the exact same thing as other brand, especially when you are the one that is entering the market. If you're not gonna offer anything different, people would be, why do I have to adopt this new brand if it's gonna be exactly the same, right? You may get some sales, but of course you wouldn't have that edge or advantage that you would require to guarantee that you are gonna get those sales, right? You will be almost just relying on luck and the mood of people at the moment of buying to see if you can get some sales or not. So this is really important. Make sure that your positioning is different from any other of brands. Okay. So now let's return. We're gonna go back to the future, and we're gonna talk about these indicators. So once you know that your brand has been already established, you need to know how are you going to measure that your brand is being successful, how are you going to measure it is growing, because you can not just create your brand and just leave it as it is. Let's just hope and pray that it works. No, right? You need to have some sort of control over it. You need to know that whatever you're doing is working, because if it's not working, then you have to put your efforts somewhere else. How are we gonna measure this growing? How are you gonna make sure that everything we're doing is actually giving us something to keep working on? Well, we're gonna use these indicators. As you know, there are a lot of indicators out there. There are for all tastes. Whatever you can think of is going to be turned into an indicator somehow. But here we're just going to talk about four that I believe they are essential, and that this is going to be homework for you to search for the rest of them and see which ones do you believe that for your specific circumstance is gonna be more important, perhaps. Okay, so these four are brand awareness, brand attributes, brand reputation, and brand loyalty. Let's take a look at them. Brand awareness is the degree to which consumers are familiar with the brand. Of course, once you get your brand, what you need to do is try to have as many people as possible to get to know your brand, right? For example, you know that Coca-Cola that was the most popular in the world. Like it was something that almost everybody knows about. Coca-Cola is a perfect example of great brand awareness. Then we have the brand attributes and associations. These are the qualities and characteristics that consumers associate with a specific brand. So there is a whole perceptual map that you can make to analyze how people perceive your brand compared to others. For example, people may think of Coca-Cola as a brand that is more tasty than Pepsi, and at the same time they might think that it is a bit more expensive than Pepsi. Now, perhaps this doesn't happen in the US, I'm not sure, this is just an example, but here in Peru, everyone knows that Coca-Cola is a little bit more expensive than Pepsi. So you want to use this perceptual map to compare yourself with other brands and see if you're in the spot that you would like to be. Do you have to change it? And then how so? How are we going to change the way people think about us? Then we have the brand reputation, which is basically how likely is it that people are going to recommend your brand. So you can use different tools for this, like for example the net promoter score. Basically, in a scale from 0 to 10, if people rank your brand from 0 to 6, basically they are detractors, they don't like your brand. If they rate it from 7 to 8, they are passives, basically they don't really care about your brand. But if they rank it from 9 to 10, then they are promoters, they are happy with your brand. And what's going to happen is that they are going to be most likely to recommend your product, your brand, to other people. Of course, the opposite is being a detractor. And if at some point they start talking about brands and they think about yours, what's going to happen is that they are going to ask the others to, well, not consume from your brand. Then we have the brand loyalty. Will your customers stay despite the efforts of other brands to try to win them over? You need to think about which factors can influence into this. So, for example, we can talk about Spotify and YouTube Music and the music service from Apple. So, basically, for example, in this type of services and in the streaming services in general, something that is really important is the cost of migrating to other service. Why? Because for example, in Spotify, you're gonna have all your playlists, you have all your like music, and if you had to move to other service, you will have to start all over again. So this is something important. Now, you need to understand which factors are taken into account for a person to keep their loyalty to your brand, depending on the industry in which you work. If we go to the shirts industry again, well, perhaps we will have to do with the prices. How often do you have sales? How often do you have deals? And many stuff like quality, for example. So you need to know how loyal your customers are, but also why are they loyal. And this is going to be everything for today's episode of the Brand Data Lab. I know that we haven't talked about much about numbers besides these indicators, but I wanted to focus a little bit more on this qualitative research because from now on, We're gonna be talking mostly about numbers, especially now that we are gonna talk about marketing in the next capsule. We're gonna be talking about a lot of numbers there, a lot of indicators, because we need to realize that marketing strategies must be driven by data, not just by hunches. So to make that point, we're gonna talk a lot about numbers and data and how it helps marketing, and so on for the rest of the capsules. So thanks again. Remember to check all our social media to stay updated in all of the news related to the Brand Blueprint podcast. Leave your comments, thoughts, ideas, questions. This is Christian Ampuero. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on the Brand Blueprint journey. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms to stay updated. Watch the full episodes on our YouTube channel for an in-depth experience. Don't forget to subscribe to our website at thebrandblueprint.biz for exclusive content and materials. We're everywhere you need us to be.